Yes, it is possible to take an IRA and roll that over into solo 401k. Again, remember the qualification criteria for the solo 401k. You must be self-employed or own a business without full-time employees. So it is not for everyone. If you're eligible, then you can do that. You can be set up in about a week, and rollover can be done in a few days.
This is the real estate investing experience. We get it. Real estate can be rough sometimes, and that's why we bring in the experts to talk about the experiences you won't hear anywhere else with your hosts, John Cohen and Chris Grinzik.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Investing Experience. I'm your host, Chris Grinzik. With me, as always, John Cohen. How are we doing?
We're good. We had an interesting day today. We had two investors in the office, which is awesome.
Yes.
We moved offices, so now we actually have a real full space.
Where they can come and sit.
They can come and sit. It's being built out.
Is this what a real business feels like?
This is what a real business feels like. No, but it was fun. You don't have. We have an open door policy. We want our investors to come, but they don't. But it was fun today. We had two investors in the office. We had good time. Talked about some deals. So it was fun. It was a different day. So it was nice.
Yeah. Definitely a lot of running around. Nice little miscommunication there. Had to drive half an hour to pick them up. But.
Yeah, one of the investors missed by about 6 towns, but we scooped him up.
It's all good.
Got lunch, brought him back, and it was
never
fun.
Been to that restaurant, so that was worth it.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Very good restaurant.
Yeah, that's why.
Anybody in Mineola, Avotaco, hit it up.
Avotaco. There you go.
Awesome. We got an interesting guest on today. Good topic. We haven't really spoken about it. I don't know a whole lot about it because I don't really have any retirement money because I'm only 28. So I haven't really done too much with it or know too much about it. I obviously know it through dealing with investors that do utilize it and use it for other things. So it'll be interesting to hear his take on his experience using it himself, advising other people, helping other people, all of that good stuff. But with that being said, Dmitry, thanks for joining us.
Guys, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be on the show.
Absolutely. So can we start off, take a couple minutes or however long, just tell people who you are, where you're from, your background, and kind of what you're doing in real estate.
Yeah, just a brief background about myself. Actually, by education, I am an engineer. As you can hear from my accent, I'm not from here, not from the United States. I immigrated here in the US from Russia back in 1996. So I can't believe it, but it's been more than half of my life that I spent here. This is my home now. I'm a citizen, proud citizen of this great country that gives so much opportunity for us. But like I said, background is in electromechanical engineering. I was laid off from my job in around 2000. And then that kind of forced me into looking for something else. And I ended up being recruited by a local firm in financial services. So started in financial services, was dealing with traditional retirement accounts, IRAs and mutual funds and so forth. And about the same time, I got introduced to real estate investing. So I started by buying a foreclosure, fixer-upper. I did all the work myself, so I have experience with that. And then a few years later, actually decided to transition full-time into real estate and was working with a local real estate investment firm as an advisor. Got my realtor's license and then my broker's license. And about 2009, 2010, that's when the market shifted. And I was given a task to basically start a department within a company of offering retirement accounts, self-directed retirement accounts, because we worked with a few companies, none of them really worked out. Mm-hmm. That's why I was given this task, because of my experience in financial services and experience as a real estate investor. And so about a year later, I decided to transition on my own and started Sense Financial, and the rest is the history, I guess.
Awesome. So when you say the rest is history, can you just give us a little more in depth about on the investing side? Obviously the foreclosure fixer upper. What are some of the types of properties you've done, over the years, and how has that shifted? Just as a little bit of a background, so we know a little bit more about it.
Sure. Yeah. So about my personal experience, basically I started, like I said, buying this fixer-upper foreclosure, and about the same time I purchased my residence. My very first house to live in was actually a townhome. And in about 4 years, that was 2001, 2002 time frame, California market was on fire. In about 4 years, both of these properties doubled in value, actually almost tripled in value. And so I did a cash out refinance, pulled some of the equity and started reinvesting, buying more properties. I actually started going out of state. And I did well with some of them, but then towards the end of that few-year period, market started changing, and I ended up buying a few properties that ultimately I ended up losing because I ended up buying them at the top of the market. They ended up being upside down, negative cash flow. But that was a good learning experience. And then when I started my business, I had a portfolio of about a dozen rentals. And at that time, I actually started changing my investment strategy. I wanted to be more passive. So I started liquidating portion of my portfolio and became a private lender. So I basically used my money to lend to other people, became a bank, if you will. And it's been great. I did that both personally with my savings as well as my retirement funds. Was able to double retirement account for each, myself and my wife. And so it's been going great, except my personal investments. As my income grows, interest income from private lending, so is my tax bill. And there was nothing to offset that, no deductions. So I started looking I didn't want to go back to single family rentals. I didn't really want to deal with that. And that led me to multifamily syndications. I researched that, and about a couple of years ago, I got into several syndications and loving it. So passive investing is really what I enjoy.
Awesome. Before, I just want to back up a second. Before you started liquidating and going into the private lending side, did you say you had 1,000 rentals?
No.
Okay.
I had about 22 properties at one point. Ended up losing a few. At the time when I started my business, I had about a dozen, and I started liquidating those. So,
gotcha. Okay. I just misunderstood then. I just wanted to clear that up. So walk me through why you went towards, just as a little bit of backstory so people get a little bit better understanding, why you started going into the lending side of things. Was it you saw the people that lent the money take back those properties and you felt it was a safer alternative? Did you feel like you were getting steadier returns? What was the mindset that made you shift from the rental equity side over to the lending side?
Well, dealing with a couple of dozen rental properties, both locally as well as remotely, taught me some few things. And I managed some of the properties myself. I had other properties managed by property managers. And even though you have a property manager, if you have a rental property, you still need to be on top of things. You still need to manage your property manager. And, there's constantly something that you have to deal with. And when I was introduced to private lending about 6-7 years ago, actually from one of my clients, he was doing that. So he introduced me to this guy locally who we became good friends. And he needed some money. I actually ended up lending him $30,000 on a second property. And I just experienced that myself. It's I'm getting 10%. I still holding that loan, by the way. It's been about 6 years now, and it's completely passive. I did my due diligence ahead of time. I lend the money, and I'm just getting some people call it the mailbox money. So I'm getting a check mailed to me every single month. All I have to do is deposit that. By the way, I don't even have to drive to the bank to do that. I just take a picture, do mobile deposit with my smartphone. And I do have a bunch of loans. I acquired a bunch of loans since then, and majority of them actually being direct deposited. So I don't even have to deal with the check. So that's how passive it is versus owning a rental property, and you have to deal with vacancies, with potential tenancy issues, repairs. Not to say that it's a bad investment. It's just, for me, I enjoy private lending more. I still own some rentals, but I really enjoy the passive component of being a private lender.
Yeah, I think everybody gets to the point when they're active that it becomes, too much, or, there's too many things going on, or you just get into a stage in your life where you want to take a step back, and that passive side of things becomes incredibly attractive. You've obviously built up capital over the years through working in your own investments and things like that. And when you have money, you are willing to take less profit for less work. It goes back to when we had Craig on our podcast, the house hacking guy. He talked about, he had this spectrum he spoke about of profitability versus comfortability. And he said, when I was young, I started very high towards the profitability side, and he was basically renting out every single square foot of his house just to get cash flow positive on a house hack. And then he said over the years, he started moving back towards that spectrum where eventually, had his own bedroom. So I think it's interesting to hear, yourself as, older than Craig, who's, mid to late 20s, maybe early 30s. I don't remember his age, but as you get later and later, that spectrum, continues to shift, and you found yourself going, even further along. I just want to make sure I understand when you referenced, your own business. I don't know if you mentioned it or I just missed it, or maybe you didn't. What exactly is that business?
Well, I started a company called Sense Financial. And what we do, again, the backstory to that is I was working with a local real estate investment firm. And basically, the company was specializing in providing turnkey rental properties. Mostly local investors in California, in several markets around the US. And so I was basically one of the advisors. And because of my experience in financial services and my real estate investment experience, I was given this a task to start a department within a company, because we had more and more people coming in with retirement money. They run out of savings, or maybe they didn't have a credit to qualify for a conventional loan, but they wanted to use retirement money to continue to invest, because it was a good time to invest at that time. And I was given this task to start something, because none of the companies that we worked with, we've gone through several self-directed companies, none of them worked out long term. And so I started this as a department. And then about a year later, in 2010, I started Sense Financial. And our niche is self-directed retirement accounts with checkbook control. So it's a truly self-directed account that gives you, the client, total control over your retirement dollars.
So I think that's a good segue into, that space, right? Because we haven't had anybody on our podcast. We haven't spoken to anybody that has an in-depth knowledge and or a company to explain that. So when Dmitri's talking about investing through a self-directed 401k is what the specialty is, whether it's an IRA or 401k, can you explain what the difference between checkbook control? Can you explain that? Because I know there are some companies that provide retirement plans, but they don't allow you to invest in real estate. So can you explain why self-directed, and then also the checkbook control aspect of it, why those are benefits to the individual as opposed to, giving it to Fidelity or, one of the bigger companies that invest their money for them?
Oh, sure. So let me, explain just a basic what self-directed IRA is, and then I provide a comparison to what the checkbook and solo 401k is. As you know, most of you who listen have retirement accounts with a custodian. And custodian is a company that holds the assets of your IRA or 401k. And custodian has the power to limit the investment choices. So if you go with the major brokerages like Fidelity and Schwab and so forth, they limit your investment choices to what they offer, to what investments that they offer to the public. And so that is always confined to stocks and mutual funds. You can't open account with Fidelity, an IRA, and buy real property with that. You cannot do that. Fidelity will not allow you to do so. That's when the self-directed IRA custodians come in. It's a custodian again, but they don't place those limitations. So they allow you to go outside of the stock market. And basically, you can invest in virtually anything. The IRS actually does not have a list of allowable investments. They do have a list of what's disallowed. And the only two investments that you cannot invest in with your IRA is collectibles, anything that is considered collectibles, and life insurance contracts. Collectibles can be coins, stamps, artwork, so anything that is considered collectible. Other than that, you have total freedom to invest. And real estate is major component. So many people do invest in real estate with their IRAs and 401ks. Now, the disadvantage is that custodian is basically like a middleman. They do hold IRA and they hold all the assets. So the cash is with them. All the assets, when you buy in a property, you have to submit a request to the custodian. They have to review it, approve it, and then they will release the funds. They'll cut the check. And they'll charge you a fee for that transaction or for cutting that check. And so that's how it works. It gives you the freedom to invest in what you want, but there is still limitations there, things that will slow down for you. And now let me segue into a solo 401k, which is a qualified retirement plan designed for those people who are self-employed or own a small business. So if you're self-employed or own a small business without full-time employees, then you qualify for this vehicle, solo 401k. It's basically a 401k like most of you know if you work for a company, but it's designed specifically for small business owners because there is no other participants other than yourself and maybe your spouse. There is no other employees who participate in the plan. It's a lot easier to maintain them, a lot less complexity there. And this plan actually does not require a custodian. So because custodian is not required, we're setting up this plan with a trust. Trust is the vehicle to hold the plan assets. And you, the client, become the trustee of the trust. And as a trustee, you control it. So you can literally go to the bank and open a business checking account in the name of the trust. Trust is a separate entity. It has its own unique name. It has its own tax ID number that IRS issued for the trust. And as a trustee, you control that. So once you set up the plan and fund it, you can literally make investment as simple as writing a check and buying that piece of property or investing in that syndication or doing a private loan.
And that's that's the major differences. Now, I know some people, they ask me the question, let's just say you open up forget the solo 401k aspect, but like a self-directed IRA or an account with a custodian. After you make the investment, and I have never seen this happen, or I don't even know the answer to this, but I know people have asked me and I've always referred them to experts because I don't know. Let's say someone opens a self-directed 401k with whatever company, Fidelity or yourself. They make that investment, you guys approve it, and then you release the money. What happens if the custodian is no longer in business or something happens with them and their money is invested? How does that transaction help? Or how does the investor then get their money back? Or how does that work?
Well, it's very uncommon, but
Yep.
It's not impossible. In fact, it did happen several years ago. There is a company called APS, American Pension Services. They actually, I think the president of the company, I don't remember his name, but you guys can just Google it. APS, American Pension Services. And the founder of the company mismanaged the money. So he actually took the client's money that he had custody of and he used it for his own interest. So basically, he's in jail right now and a bunch of investors lost their money because they did not have control over their funds. They were with a third-party custodian who violated the law, basically screwed up their account. And so what happened is that the feds came in, they took the receivership of the company, and what they did is those people who lost, they actually distributed that amount of the loss for all the clients of that company. So I had clients who actually didn't lose the money, they didn't have cash, they had money invested in some assets, so they didn't lose the cash, but they ended up paying because it was distributed for all of the clients of that company. And that's one of the things that you cannot control with the custodian. Now, you mentioned that if they invest with us, well, if we set up a self-directed solo 401k, we never touch the money for the client. What we're doing, we're setting up the plan, we're providing them with the IRS-approved plan documents, and we're creating a trust. And client is in control of that trust. So we never touch the money. The funds never go through us. And even if something happens to us, the client is in control. So nothing happens with the assets or the cash in their retirement plan. It's completely, they're 100% in control.
Exactly. So that was basically what I thought the answer was exactly that. Is in this situation, you don't have to worry about it. You have control of your own money. The other situation, if someone just does the wrong thing, there's nothing that's out of anyone's control. So if someone, and people ask like, how do you know them or how do you refer to them? You just, you got to do your own due diligence on the custodian in that case, because you can't control what's going on there. But if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, it shouldn't matter because they shouldn't be investing the money. They should just be facilitating the transaction as opposed to making any decisions. But on your side, just setting up the 401k or the solo 401k, you just set up the plans. The money's still in the individual's control.
Yeah. Is there easy, and maybe there's a basic question, I don't know, is there an easy way for people to take an IRA and convert it into a 401k? Because those things suck. Like whenever we have investors with IRAs and custodians, like the way you described it, it sounds not that bad, but it is so annoying, the process to deal with getting the custodian the information they need and, valuations every year and, releasing funds and giving funds back. Is there a way if somebody has an IRA to be like, I want to swap over to a 401k?
Well, yes, it is possible to take an IRA and roll that over into solo 401k. Again, remember the qualification criteria for the solo 401k. You must be self-employed or own a business without full-time employees. So it is not for everyone. If you're eligible, then you can do that. You can be set up in about a week and rollover can be done in a few days. If you're not eligible for solo 401k, there is another solution for an IRA. It's called the checkbook IRA. And the way the checkbook IRA is accomplished, or checkbook control over an IRA is accomplished, is by creating a special purpose single member LLC. This LLC is owned by the IRA and managed by you, the client. So the custodian is instructed to buy 100% units of the LLC. The cash from the custodian account now moved into the LLC's checking account, of which you, the client, is now have control over. So when you invest, you no longer invest from the IRA custodial account. Now you invest from the LLC checking account. Now it's more complex than checkbook IRA. You still need a custodian, and you do need the special purpose LLC that you have to initially set up and maintain. We handle that, but that adds an additional layer of complexity, which is eliminated with the solo 401k. That's why if you're eligible for solo 401k, that will be the first thing you're going to do. If not,
continue. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and if you're not eligible for solo 401k, but you do want to have the control, then checkbook IRA might be an option that you may want to consider.
Now, two things I would say. One, to see if you qualify to have a solo 401k, the first place you go is probably to talk to your accountant. The next place, if someone didn't know do you guys give that advice, or can you help people like, obviously you have to be employed, but you have to be self-employed, but no employees. It's an easy qualification, but some people may have creative structures, or their wife may. Can you help advise in that, or would you recommend them speak to their own accountant for that advice?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm not a CPA, but I certainly understand the structure and I can help them. The bottom line is very easy. Do you have any legitimate self-employment activity? It doesn't have to be full-time. We have many clients who work full-time. They still keep their full-time jobs for various reasons. Maybe it's a good income, maybe a good benefits, maybe they've been there for a long time, but they do something on the side. Maybe they're a real estate agent and they sell a couple of properties for their clients a year, or maybe they have a real estate license just to do their own deals. They want to have access to the MLS. They got the license for that reason, and maybe they only buy a couple of properties a year just for themselves. That is legitimate self-employment activity that qualifies them. Another example might be somebody who's flipping properties, right? They do have a full-time job and they flip 1 or 2 homes a year. Well, guess what? Flipping is a business. If you flip one property a year, that goes on your Schedule C, and that's another easy to distinguish criteria, right? Do you have income that you report on Schedule C? Because that's what the self-employment income is reported. And if you do report that income on Schedule C, then you'd be eligible.
And you answered my next question. The question is going to be, can you have a full-time job and also be self-employed? The answer is yes. Now, the next question I know some people, they might have worked at GE, or they might work at a company for 20 years. Then they leave that company. Then they may have a 401k and IRA. They may have a retirement plan. If they go work at another company, that money is just sitting there, probably not doing anything. They can, and correct me if I'm wrong, roll that over either into a self-directed IRA, a checkbook control IRA, or if they qualify for a self-employment, they can roll it into a checkbook control 401k. Correct?
You're exactly correct. Yes. If you have an old 401k from the previous employer, you can move that at any time. You have full control over that. If it is with the current employer, most employers will not allow you to move those funds while you're employed or until you reach a retirement age. There might be exceptions, but as a rule, typically you cannot touch 401k to your current employer. If it's a past employer 401k or 403b, 457, you can freely move that to an IRA or another 401k or solo 401k.
And that's something that I know a lot of people know about it, but I think there's a huge amount of people in this country that have old retirement accounts that are sitting there making no money, and they don't even know about this option. And that's something that everyone should research about, because if you worked at a company and you have $100,000, $200,000, whatever, just sitting there earning nothing because they're probably not making any money in it, or a couple bucks, you can take advantage of what Dmitry offers, or anyone that and then you could do private lending. You could invest in a syndication. Can you touch on, because I know there are a couple of rules in regards to what you can't do with, as far as not like investing in collectibles, but direct lineage and stuff like that, like investing in your kids' deals or investing in your brother's deals. Can you touch on that stuff? Because there are some, 401k, IRA, there's some differences in each of them. Can you touch on some things that, even if you have a self-directed plan, what you can do and can't do as far as making a physical investment?
Yeah, that's a good question. And there is really no difference between an IRA and 401k in that regard as far as prohibited transactions. There is, one thing that I can mention as far as the 401k has advantages over an IRA. If you made a prohibited transaction, your entire IRA will be considered distributed. So you'll be penalized on the whole amount in your IRA. 401k is actually just the amount that is involved in that transaction will be considered.
I didn't know
that. And another element is that if you made a prohibited transaction and discovered that, you have the ability to correct that in a 401k, in a solo 401k.
Oh.
You can actually fix that.
I didn't know.
So what, you could like replace it with cash basically and not pay the penalty?
Well, it depends on the transaction, and I don't want to go into details right
That's
now.
fine.
And I normally don't like to talk about this because I don't want to give
the wrong information.
Impression that, hey, go and do whatever you want to do because you can correct that. No, that's why I don't like to talk about this. But you do have that ability. Now, as far as prohibited transactions, I did mention the two investment types that are not allowed, which is collectibles and life insurance contracts. But in addition to that, IRS says that there is disqualified persons, and disqualified person is basically yourself, the owner of the account, your spouse, your parents, grandparents, your kids and grandkids, and their spouses. So think of it vertical line, right? Horizontally, you're okay. So your cousin, your brother, your nephew, aunt, uncle, okay. Those are not considered a disqualified person, but vertical line, immediate family members are considered disqualified. And IRS rule says that the plan cannot engage into any transaction with such person, with disqualified person. Let me give you an example. If you're a real estate agent and you buy a property for your IRA, you cannot act as an agent on that transaction. You cannot represent your IRA because that's providing services, which is not allowed. And on top of that, as an agent, on the transaction, you will receive compensation. Again, you're not allowed to receive a compensation.
Just turn around and charge a 20%
Exactly. But that's important because some people, I know early on when I started doing this and advising people and trying to put them in the right, introduce them to the right people, I was like, oh, I have a great idea. I'm going to, my wife will have an IRA and I will have an IRA and we'll just do this. I said, yeah, you can't do that. It's basically up and down, no good, horizontally, brothers, cousins, that's okay. But you don't want to go up and down. And you can't have any interest. You can't make any fees from it. You can't have any, direct interest in whatever you're doing or representing anyone up or down. So even if your dad's IRA is invested in his deal, you shouldn't, whether you want to or not, that's up to the individual. And no one's going to, you're going to do whatever you want to do. But you shouldn't have any direct interest or get any generated fee income from any of those transactions, or it's prohibited and you're going to get in trouble. Potentially.
Exactly, yes. Yeah.
When you guys advise on any of, if someone were to bring a transaction like that to you, do you guys say you can't do that or you don't want to be part of that? Now, I know if they have the checkbook control, it's on them, but do you, can you help answer some of those questions, and or do you guys look at the transactions in that situation and say, this is, I wouldn't do this if I were you?
Oh, sure. Yeah. We do offer unlimited support to our clients. So, and I actually encourage my clients and I say, listen, the best way to avoid the prohibited transaction is ask before you do it. Don't come to me after the fact and start asking me once you do it, because that's going to be too late to fix something. But listen, it takes, a quick minute to send an email or a text message or make a phone call and just, talk to me about the potential transaction if you're not sure. So if you're not sure, ask. We do provide that consultation to our clients. We can talk to them, and even not clients. I'm happy to talk to anybody about this. I enjoy this topic, and it's most transactions they're really black and white. It's you can easily say whether it's prohibited or not because the rules are pretty straightforward. Sometimes there is a gray area. And when it's a gray area, I'm a conservative guy. We talked about my investments and my personal investment strategy. I started with rentals, and you kind of mentioned, changing the strategy from the highest possible return, maybe being more conservative. So that's me. I don't chase highest returns in my investments. I want to preserve my capital. I want to have good returns. But I want to preserve what I have. And when it comes to retirement accounts, I'm a conservative guy. And whenever I advise my clients, I always try to put myself in their shoes. What would I do if I was that person? And so, like I said, most situations pretty easily can be determined as a black and white. If it's a gray area, I try to stay away from the gray area as well.
And I tend to agree. In your retirement account, that's probably not where you want to take gambles. Listen, everybody's different, but I happen to agree. If that's what you're your future looks like when you can take the money out or whatever it is. Take a gamble with, maybe your income that you make on your W-2, or take a gamble with the money that you can replace. The last thing you want to do, especially in an IRA, is get nailed with a penalty and all of it goes away for taxes or something like that. So when anyone asks me that on the fence question, I typically, if I think the answer is no, I always say you might have talked to your accountant, talk to someone smarter than me, but probably not the risk that I'd be willing to take. That's just me personally, but everyone's going to do their own thing anyway in the end.
No, for sure. I have a question. Can you touch a little bit on, you've been dealing with investors in, real estate, IRA, 401k investors for a number of years. Is there any sort of trends or insights or interesting experiences that you've found over the last 5, 10, 15 years that you think would be helpful, interesting, insightful for people that are listening, whether it's, hey, I'm a 401k investor and, here's the, problem everybody runs into, or, I raise money from 401k investors. Here's, something I found over the past 10 years. Anything that as I've just spoken that comes to mind?
Well, I don't know if we can talk about the trends because, again, I'm a relatively small fish, if you will. There is billions of dollars out there in retirement accounts, and I
hear you, but you do have
from my perspective.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so from my perspective, the bottom line is this: if you have money in a retirement account, and I'm using my experience, as a financial planner in my previous years, and just talking to people now. The bottom line is this: if you have just a normal IRA and you invest in the stock market, and the point that I want to touch on is the diversification. If you invest in the stock market, you're not diversified. You're not diversified, even if you're investing in a mutual fund, where you invest in that fund invests in a bunch of companies. You're still not diversified because you're in a single asset class. To achieve true diversification, you need different asset classes. And that might be being in the stock market, being in a bond market, might be going international, but also going into different asset class like real estate, right? Now, also within real estate, you can diversify into different things, like you can be in residential real estate, you can invest in multifamily, which is two completely different animals, and they react completely different to market changes. Now, at the same time, you can also become a private lender, so further diversifying your risk. So, I think I notice people are concerned about that. People have been concerned about that, and they're looking for ways to diversify to mitigate the risk. I received an email a couple of days ago from this lady. Said her balance in her IRA reached $1 million. We had good couple of years or a few years in the market. So she reached that, but she's nervous right now because all of her eggs in one basket, so to speak, and she wants to diversify. She wants to pull some of that money and put it into alternative things like real estate. So that's one observation that I noticed.
No, I think that's interesting because I know, my parents as well as my parents' friends and family, that's something that they've spoken about too. It's, over the years, the stock market's done X and their IRA automatically got put into it, or whether they had checkbook control or not, and it's done what it's needed to do over the years. And they're like, okay, I don't want to have to rely on that now that it's been, we're going on now 10 years since the downturn. I don't want to go into something that I know if it goes down, my value is going to proportionally go down, where if I can be in a debt position on real estate or in an equity position and go long, and earn cash flow, just a different strategy to your point. So I think it's really interesting to hear that you've experienced the same thing, because I'm sure, I've maybe spoken to 3, 4, 5, 6 people like that. I'm sure you've spoken to, 10 times that or 100 times that amount. So it's interesting to hear that that's kind of stayed the same throughout a larger sample size. And I think diversification is hugely important. It's something I'm always thinking about. I was talking to my roommate about a year ago, and we wanted to buy a goddamn laundromat in Brooklyn because we wanted to move our money into something else. And it's like, kind of got asked, what are you guys thinking? You have no idea what the fuck you're doing. But, I think it's a thing a lot of people need to be concerned about. And I also think it needs to be something that gets stepped up earlier, because I think a lot of people are like, oh, I get to my nut and then I'm going to diversify, whether that's $1 million or 10 million or 500. It's like, oh, I'm going to get there and then I'm going to diversify. I'm more of the mind that should happen earlier, but be that as it may. For you, is there any type of real estate asset or real estate type of investment that you think lends itself better to a retirement account investor?
Well, I kind of came to the realization that private lending is very good investment for retirement accounts because, like I said, I've been doing that personally, and it's been great. I received good return, good income, but it just increases my income, and which increases my taxes. Now, inside of a retirement account, all of that income is sheltered. So I'm just able to reinvest entire interest that I receive. I can reinvest into something else, which is another loan. So that's been great. I will continue to invest. I believe it's a great way to invest your retirement dollars.
When I know that with IRAs and everything, when you invest, and I don't know if you want to speak about this and or if what your thoughts are, but UBIT tax on leveraged real estate investments. Do you have, because I know that a lot of our investors have invested in deals that are leveraged, and the deals are, the returns are huge, and IRAs have UBIT tax, which is basically you pay tax on your leveraged portion of your return, even in a retirement account. But can you speak to that, or have you had any clients or people reach out to you because they wanted to switch it over to a 401? Have you ran into that, or do you know, or can you talk anything about it? Because I think that's another question that a lot of our investors ask, like, how can we avoid this?
Oh, sure, yes, it is. A subject that I'm familiar with, and it comes up constantly. And especially speaking of the syndication investments, most of them are using leverage. So when you invest your IRA in an investment like this, the leveraged portion of the investment will produce UBIT. Now, to help your listeners understand what that is, let me just use a simple example of just buying a single family home, right? You're buying a home for $100,000. You put $50,000, 50% down, and you get a loan for $50,000. Well, 50% of the purchase price is leveraged. You did not use your IRA money to buy. You actually used bank's money to buy. So IRS says when you engage in an investment like this, when there is a leveraged use to buy an investment, the portion of the leveraged income or income that is produced by leveraged portion of the property will be subject to unrelated business income tax. That income is called UDFI, unrelated debt financed income. And that UDFI is subject to UBIT, unrelated business income tax. So, and that is, pretty steep tax. It comes in tiers, but it's after, I think, $12,000, it gets to 37%. So it's pretty steep tax, and there is nothing you can do about that in an IRA. It is applicable in an IRA. But that's another benefit of the 401k, because solo 401k is exempt from leverage tax from tax on leveraged real estate. So if you invest in a syndication with a 401k, unlike an IRA, you will not have to pay the taxes.
So we advise that all the time. Now, we try and tell our investors and our clients, if there's a way you can roll it over to a 401k, if that's an option, obviously take advantage of it, but do that now for a deal that comes up in the future? Because it does take some time to do that if that's option. If that's not an option, is there any other way to invest that IRA in a syndication, maybe to take advantage of a position where you wouldn't have to pay a UBIT tax? Like if you put it into a debt position on that deal, can you avoid the UBIT tax by investing in a debt instrument as opposed to an equity instrument?
Oh, yes. If it is simply a debt investment, then yes, there is no UBIT tax on passive income. If you're investing in the debt, you basically receive an interest income. Interest income is passive, and that will not be subject to UBIT.
Yeah.
But if it is, actually you're taking a portion of the ownership interest in that LLC, in that syndication, then I don't think there is a way to avoid that. Again, I'm not a CPA, but I don't think so.
Yeah, no, that's what people that people that we've spoken to, we try and explain that to everybody, because we've had deals with very, very high returns, and then they get hit with a UBIT tax, and they look at you like, "What's this?" And it's like, yes, we were very clear up front that a portion of your gain, because we have leverage on the deal, is going to be taxed, and it is an extremely high rate. So anyone listening, as Dmitry said, and I would say, speak to your accountant first, but when you're making an investment through self-directed IRA, 401k, understand the differences and the potential of, moving out of one instrument into the other, so you don't get hit with a tax. Now you are only paying taxes on the leverage portion of the game, so you're still making a great return. You have to understand that, but there's no reason to give away money if you don't have to, if you could have avoided that by understanding what you were getting involved in. I wanted to bring that up because I know people sometimes don't understand that, and the difference between the 401k and the IRA is huge, because you don't subject yourself to UBIT on the other side. So it's good to know.
And the problem with it is you can't pay the tax from your IRA, correct? You have to pay with cash.
Well, no, you could pay with it as long as it is. Like we had a client who invested in the deal. We told her what her tax consequence was going to be. She wasn't paying attention. She took all her money out and invested in another deal. So then when the tax bill came, she had nothing in her IRA to pay it. So you can pay it if there's money in it, but if there's no money in it,
gotcha,
you have to write the check.
Because I was like, that makes it so much worse. But if you can pay it from IRA, that's not the end of the world.
So I don't. I think it's a good place to.
Yeah,
I know we're conscious of time.
Yeah, to wrap it up, Dmitry, thank you so much for coming on. Can you tell people where they can learn a little bit more about you, get in touch with you, pick your brain about some of this stuff?
Oh, sure. You can find me on social media, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. I'm on Bigger Pockets. I'm commenting them a lot, actually getting a lot of interesting conversations there. But probably the best way, or the easiest way to get a hold of me, is through our website, which is sensefinancial.com. And sense is like common sense, SENSE, sensefinancial.com. And you can reach out to us. And it's a great educational tool as well. If you want to learn about self-directed retirement accounts, our website has a lot of great content.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you so much again. This was awesome.
Thank you for having me.